a grant from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona for the Water Conservation Grant from the Water Conservation Grant Fund for the Parks and Rec Water Conservation Program. As part of the city's goal of water security, Parks and Rec Director Chris Calcaterra will present an opportunity for your approval to accept a WIFA grant to fund turf reduction efforts and irrigation studies and improvements throughout the city's parks and landscaped areas. Chris, have you introduce your guest there.
Thank you, Mr. Darwin.
Thanks.
Mayor, council members, tonight, from your Parks and Recreation team, tonight we wanted to share some really good news. We recently received a grant from WIFA. I'll go ahead and abbreviate and put it on the screen for you. But most importantly, it's a water conservation grant that we will be awarded if it's acted on upon tonight. And I wanted to really thank the water department, and particularly Kate Powers. I know he's hopefully listening somewhere in the Northwest, but he shared an opportunity and really did an explanation for my team about what this opportunity means for, typically WIFA is used for construction projects and type of these, but this is really stretching into the zone of operations. So a great opportunity. However, that opportunity came with a very short deadline. We had 8 days to turn this grant around. So the Parks and Rec team members you see here listed literally jumped into the water, if you will, into the study and the grant process and completed this application and submission in very short order. The opportunity we'll hear about tonight is not solely about the reduction of non-programmable turf in our park system, but rather about the ongoing stewardship of water conservation in our community. Through this current CIP program and this grant award, we are estimating approximately 35 million gallons per year of consumption savings. And with that, I would like to introduce and turn over to presentation to our Parks Operations and Facilities Manager, Mike Elliott, who led this team. Mike?
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Darwin, give you all the thanks in the world for allowing me to come back up here again. About a year and a half ago, I was here, and I didn't have a jacket, I didn't have a tie. Absolutely unprofessional. So I told myself I'm gonna dress to the nines for tonight. So if you'll indulge me, I'll definitely jump into this. Thank you. Hopefully my wife says the same thing. So.
You should stand up and turn around for her on camera.
So the City of Peoria Parks and Recreation Department is, as you know, very robust. We have 37 neighborhood parks, 3 community parks, and the Peoria Sports Complex, among others, that come in at over 665 acres. 256 of those are actually turf. So the impetus for this turf reduction is to address areas that we consider non-functional turf. Some of those examples are turf that are on slopes, which are logically just very difficult to irrigate successfully, streetscape and median turfs. So you think about rights-of-way medians at intersections that are very thin, narrow areas, and then of course narrow, smaller, oblong turf areas. So of the 256 acres of turf that we have in our neighborhood and community parks and the complex for that matter, 27% or 68 acres of that is what we define as non-functional turf. So I want to go a little bit into our timeline to see how we got to where we are and to actually show that this was a contracted, deliberate attempt to increase our water conservation efforts. So back in 2017, the City of Peoria issued a drought management plan, which was reviewed and approved by Mayor and Council in May 2017. That drought management plan's intent was to highlight the city's diverse water portfolio and to outline procedures and strategies for when a drought condition has been declared. Some of those proposed demand reductions include reducing irrigation for parks and landscaping. This served as the impetus for the Parks and Recreation Department to begin considering long-term water conservation strategies. In 2018, the Parks and Recreation Department commissioned a third party through a competitive RFP process to perform an irrigation and turf reduction study of the department's turf areas. The initial iteration of the study provided an in-depth irrigation system audit, an as-built irrigation mapping, and proposed turf reduction strategies for 18 of the city's 37 neighborhood parks. In 2020, the department begins the implementation of some of these turf reduction strategies that were outlined in the study. The first project occurred at Alta Vista Park, in which we removed a little over an acre of turf, which results in about a million gallons of water saved per year in perpetuity. In 2022, the department begins the second iteration of the irrigation and turf reduction study with a third party, which was also awarded via competitive RFP process. This was aimed at performing audits of the remaining neighborhood parks, performing assessments of the parks that underwent a turf reduction as a result of the previous study, updated irrigation system design standards, and the intentional design of turf reduction in several neighborhood parks. On June 29th of 2022, the city declared a Stage 1 water watch due to the Colorado River shortages. The city required municipal departments to reduce water usage by 5%. Our department was able to accomplish this, and actually we blew it out of the water, no pun intended, through a myriad of methods to include reduced watering windows, elimination of ornamental fountain use, and continued turf reduction efforts. This was key as we are the largest user of water in the city at over 600 million gallons a year. Later in 2022, the department presented its short and long-term strategies to the city's Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Board. The board supported the strategies as presented. That springboarded us into 2023, where the department worked to develop its own Stage 1 drought contingency plan. That plan highlights Tier 1 implementation strategies, areas to consider for turf reduction, tracking and reporting methods, as well as the acceleration of the pre-existing Water Conservation Capital Improvement Program. And then in 2023, the department applies for the Water Conservation Grant Fund, which Chris didn't want to outline all of the words because I get it, it's long, I'd rather speak in an acronym myself. But this program would accelerate the scope and the immediacy of the current water conservation program and its turf reduction efforts. So what is the Water Conservation Grant Fund? It was an act that was signed into law by the Arizona State Legislature in July 2022 to help facilitate water conservation projects throughout the state. $200 million was awarded or appropriated to the fund via American Rescue Act monies, which allows grants to be placed into one of two categories. Either projects, which are activities that are confined to a particular time and place and likely include a single deliverable. Those projects are eligible for up to $250,000 in grant funding. The other category are programs, activities that will occur in multiple phases over a longer time frame and may include one or multiple deliverables. Those programs are eligible for up to $3 million in grant funding. Some of the examples of the water conservation projects and programs that were outlined in the grant announcement were rainwater harvesting, water use education, and conservation research, and infrastructure efficiency upgrades. For this iteration of the grant, the city applied for monies under the widespread installation of drought-resistant landscaping and turf removal category. Regardless of whichever category is selected, a 25% funding match is required. The city applied for $2.5 million in requested grant monies with the 25% match amount of $630,937.50 coming from our existing Water Conservation Capital Improvement Program, resulting in a total of $3,154,687.50, the 50 cents is critical, that will be dedicated to performing targeted turf reductions throughout the park system. On August 16th, department leadership met with the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority Board, where we were approved via grant resolution for the total requested amount of $2,523,750. The grant resolution was delivered to the city on September 5th. So I want to talk about some of the key grant benefits. First, it accelerates our citywide turf reduction strategies. The two iterations of our irrigation system and turf reduction study help to identify areas that would be excellent candidates for turf reduction and water conservation efforts throughout the park system. The approved grant funding would serve as an immediate fusion into our turf removal efforts and would accelerate our timeline significantly to ensure that we are conserving more water more quickly. It robustly complements our existing Water Conservation Capital Improvement Program. So our current program has been an effective tool the department has used to fund a myriad of water conservation efforts, to include the funding of both iterations of the turf study, booster pump purchases and repairs, irrigation system repairs, communication system improvements, and of course, turf reductions. This grant funding would greatly complement our existing efforts to ensure that we are holistically addressing water conservation in our parks. And third, because I love PowerPoint transitions, it allows for the intentional design and implementation of turf reduction through a competitive RFP process. Funding of this magnitude will allow for the department to solicit a vendor through a competitive RFP process to perform the turf reductions as a single program rather than several disparate iterations. The procurement process will allow for the city to realize several efficiencies with everything from pricing to project design and timing. It will also ensure that there will be a single vendor executing consistent turf removal and xeriscape planting strategies throughout the city. The department also plans to implement a deliberate and comprehensive communication plan, which will focus on educating the public about our water conservation efforts, turf reduction matrices, and other outreach efforts. So the staff recommendation is to accept a grant from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona in the amount of $2 million, I keep doing that, forgive me, $2,523,750 for targeted turf reductions throughout the Parks and Recreation footprint, enter into the 2024 Water Infrastructure Finance Authority Grant Funding Agreement, and authorize a budget amendment from contingency to the Parks and Recreation Grants Fund. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Good presentation, Mike. One question for you. Is there a time frame that this money has to be spent? Because I know grants usually have a time frame attached to it. Is there one attached to this?
Mayor, Councilman Edwards, that's an absolutely amazing question. We have until December of 2026 to spend the monies, and I will tell you, as soon as we get it, we plan on spending it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Patena.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael Orr, Chris, will the parks remain open during the construction period?
Mayor and Councilmember Patena, absolutely. If there is a situation that requires a closure of the park, we will communicate that well ahead of time. There may be the opportunity to leverage other projects that we have that may result in a park closure, but overall a greater improvement to the park.
And if they remain open, what will you do to ensure the safety of the park users?
Part of our communication process through the RFP is to outline several strategies that ensures that the park is safe and accessible, even during the turf removal project, whether that includes fencing, or we've had some situations where we've had to have staffing on hand. So there'll be a thorough and extensive and more importantly, proactive communication process to ensure that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the other council members?
No.
No. Great presentation. This is your second presentation?
This is the one that counts, Al, so.
We'll delete the other one.
Absolutely.
And you look fantastic.
Yes, sir.
So I think good job. Council members, do I have any other further discussion at all? Doesn't seem like it. All right. Do I have a motion for 15R? Second?
Second?
Please vote.
Vice Mayor Dunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer. Motion passes.
Great job, gentlemen. Thank you.